we go. So welcome to the Mississippi River Network's River Days of Action, June 10th to June 20th. This is our Lunch and Learn today. We have a panel discussion, A Just Mississippi River for All. And before I turn it over to our moderator, Pat Nunnally from the University of Minnesota, I just want to introduce myself and the organization I represent and share a little bit more about this Mississippi River Days of Action. And so my name is Michael Anderson. I'm the Outreach and Engagement Manager for the Mississippi River Network. I'm based here near the confluence of the Minnesota and the Mississippi Rivers, or Bedote, as my Dakota neighbors call the area, and whose ancestral homelands are here in present-day Minneapolis. MRN is proud to host this Lunch and Learn as part of our River Days of Action events. For friends joining us today who are unfamiliar with the Mississippi River Network, we are a coalition of nearly 60 nonprofit organizations and businesses working together to protect the land, water, wildlife, and people of our Mississippi River. MRN implements the only national public program of its kind dedicated for the river, and that's called the One Mississippi program. One Mississippi is all about educating, engaging, and inspiring people to take action to protect our river. By signing up as river citizens, people show their commitment to the river and agree to take action on its behalf. So just as a quick example, I have a River Citizen t-shirt on today with our tagline, "Boundaries don't protect rivers, people do." And I think that's going to be a theme that will resonate throughout our panel discussion. And so we invite everyone to become a river citizen today, just to stay in the loop on future ways to get involved with the river. River citizens are people that want to protect and clean up our river. Whether in armchairs or wading boots, river citizens protect the river by caring for it in simple ways that make a big difference. So as Misa was pointing out on the screen, go over to onemississippi.org, and Kelly, our executive director of the Mississippi River Network, just shared in the chat the direct link to become a river citizen. Stay connected. We encourage everyone to sign up today. So, as mentioned earlier, you probably noticed when you registered, the event we are gathered here today is part of the network's River Days of Action series, which started June 10th and continues to June 20th. We invite you to check out the other 40 plus events happening in person and virtually, from Headwaters to Gulf and across the country. You can find the full event schedule at onemississippi.org. And lastly, River Days of Action, right? What is the action part about? So we do have a universal action that's accompanying these River Days, and this is happening across the watershed when people are invited and taking action in a collective virtual way by signing a public petition that supports a new vision for our Mississippi River that focuses on restoration, resiliency, and equity. And so we're going to hear more about environmental justice and environmental racism issues facing our river today. And so by joining us in this collective action, by signing the petition, you're supporting a new vision for the river that focuses on restoration, resilience, and equity, and works in the four areas of improving water quality, restoring habitat and natural systems, eliminating aquatic invasive species, and building local resilience to natural disasters, all while prioritizing investments in communities of color and economically disadvantaged communities along our river. I am certain that my colleagues have shared in the chat the different links to sign that petition. And additionally, you can pull out your smartphone. You probably have your smartphone sitting next to you, flip it to camera mode, point it at that QR code, which is the black and white kind of log jam looking thing on your screen. That's going to pop up a little link. Click that link, boom, you're right there at the petition page. 10-second action for the river. So we'll come back to this at the end, just some more ways to sign this petition, but I want to keep us moving and move on over to the stars of today's show. And that'll be our Lunch and Learn event, panel discussion on environmental justice. And I'm going to turn it over to Pat Nunnally from the University of Minnesota as the moderator. Over to you, Pat.
Thank you, Mike. I'm Pat Nunnally from the University of Minnesota, as he said. I'm on the steering committee of the Mississippi River Network, and I'm coming to you today from St. Paul, Minnesota, which is part of Dakota homeland. I work with Dakota people. I'm not myself Dakota, but they have taught me that in Makoche, Kinde, Dakota, Tamakoche, I apologize for pronouncing that badly, but in Dakota, that means that in this place, the Dakota and the land belong to each other. We'll start off today with Hannah Jo King, who works with several coalitions. I'll put websites in the chat as we go, and then the other panelists will go in a generally but not exclusively downriver direction. We'll ask the group first to just talk about themselves, their organization, their work toward a just relationship with the Mississippi River. There's a crowded group of people. We have a lot of interesting folks working on these projects today. So there will hopefully be time for questions, but if you have questions and put them in the chat, even if we don't get to them, we can have a facility to get somebody to write back to you with that. So we can't have just people blurting out questions, because then we would never get everybody heard. But that's how we're going to try to do it through the chat today. The session, as we said before, is being recorded, will be posted in the future on the One Mississippi website. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hannah Jo from the Rights of the Mississippi River. Take it away.
Okay, afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Pat and Michael, for hosting. It's great to be here. Yes, I'm Hannah Jo King. I go by Hannah Jo. I use she and they pronouns. I'm here with two of my co-organizers from the Rights of Mississippi River, Michelle Shaw and Nookomis, Debra Topping. I'm going to try to be brief because those two are way more knowledgeable than me. But I am, well, let's see. So I am African-American and European-American, descendant of enslaved peoples / settler here on these lands. I'm based in Minneapolis, present-day Minneapolis, which is Dakota homelands. And I'm a student at the University of Minnesota, a grad student. I study environmental justice with Black and Indigenous communities. And I'll just read our mission statement for the Rights of Mississippi River, and then I'll pass it on because, as I said, they are way more knowledgeable than me. But as a group, we are a grassroots community organization, and our mission is to protect Nibi, Nini, water, and all of her communities by gaining legal rights for Mississippi River from headwaters to Gulf of Mexico. And the ways that we approach this work are by growing a base of supporters, building community relationships along the river, educating youth and the public about treaty rights and environmental law, advocating for environmental justice. Treaty rights, systemic racism, and the responsibility that we all have to steward the earth make it essential that we work together to make this happen. So that's a little intro. I'll pass it on to whoever's next in our group. Miigwech, thank you.
Thank you very much. Michelle, are you here and ready?
Hi, yes, I can go next. My name is Michelle Shaw, and I'm coming to you from occupied Dakota land here in Northeast Minneapolis. I'm a doggy mom, so you might hear them protecting me here today. I'm an organizer with my neighborhood. I'm a part of our Northside Green Zone that is in our that is advocating for environmental justice here in the state. And I fight Line 3 in northern Minnesota. I am also a huge advocate for not only bringing our Native relatives to the table and being sure that all of our communities of color have a chance to engage, but also stepping back so that they are leading. And that's something that our group is also advocating for as well. It's time for us all. So that brings me to Rights of Mississippi River. We started 2 years ago this July as a result of a few members' involvement with the co-creation team that was a workman project called Upper Harbor Terminal on Mississippi River. We were concerned about the intentional lack of engagement from both the park board and the city. And we were also concerned that Mississippi River was completely invisible in that conversation. At the same time, just 2.5 miles from my home and the spot where Upper Harbor Terminal starts, there was daily pollution occurring. How could there be housing going up and no environmental impact statement on air quality conducted when there are 4 polluters within a mile from this location? And these are all Title I polluters, and I'm learning that that means under the Clean Air Act, National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So just like I said, 2.5 miles from my home, there's death and destruction happening on a daily basis. I met a few people from the Baton Rouge neighborhood, and they conducted a study in 2015. In that study, they examined the long-term mortality trends from 1997 to 2015 for all racial and ethnic groups in the Lowry Bridge area that goes across Mississippi River. So if Michael or Misa could put up the pictures, that would be great. There's one there that shows that.
Michael, can you make me the host?
And I'll just keep talking while that goes up. So the Lowry Bridge area connects both North and Northeast Minneapolis. And they compared that to a similar demographic that had relatively clear air from industrial pollution, and that was in Mound, Minnesota. And so, yeah, that picture there shows Mississippi River, it shows the Lowry Bridge, and then to the right of the bridge is GAF, shingling plant, and that is one of the main sources of pollution. If you go on the other side of the bridge, there's Northern Metals. Northern Metals just had a fire about a month ago, and it has been another huge source of pollution here. And there are two other huge polluters within a mile of the bridge. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So they found that there were 34 companies within Hennepin County with MPCA air permits. And of those, there were distance from the Lowry area, from the center of Lowry and 3 miles from the center of the Mound area. So that's a huge difference. And then the Mound area had 1 company with Title I in their air permits. And of course, the Lowry area has 14. And like I said, there were 4 within a mile. So what they found as far as health goes, that the average annual lung cancer death rate was much higher. And it was, sorry, I'm trying to find the stats here, 73 per 100,000 in the Lowry area compared to 19 per 100,000. And if you take a look at what it is statewide, it is about half of that in the state of Minnesota. So just thinking about the fact that it's double a couple miles from my home here along Mississippi River. And that those same stats play out in other areas in terms of asthma, respiratory diseases, and so on. So just to kind of wrap up, we know this isn't the only place it's happening. It's happening in Cancer Alley in Louisiana, and I imagine other places in between. So we need accountability, and that's what we're about for Rights in Mississippi. So I will pass it on to Nookomis Deb.
Wait, just a second. There was another image you had. Did you want me to show that?
Oh yeah, can we show that real quick? That shows what, that shows what went into the river, essentially from Northern Metals. So when I went on a tour with somebody in the river to look at Upper Harbor Terminal, they pulled that up. It's a magnet. And they pulled it up and showed us some of that pollution that goes in the river every day. So just thinking about that and what kind of particulates then people are breathing in. I mean, anyway, so I just wanted to share that with people.
Super, super. Thank you for sharing that. It's a dismaying story, but we're glad to hear that you guys are working so hard to be on it. I'll stop sharing screen now. Nookomis, Debra, are you able to get some connection with us?
Bonjour, bonjour. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Yep.
Okay, I'll try not to move.
Have you started? You can go anytime.
I am here coming in live from Fond du Lac. I'm trying not to move.
Yeah.
So I apologize. Oh my goodness. This just totally throws me off kilter when you cannot hear me. Anyways, hey, it's good to be here. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a wife of 39 years, a mama of 3 beautiful daughters, a grandma of 3 amazing grandsons, and then we are expecting another. Yay! I am also the co-founder of Rise Coalition, Resilient Indigenous Sisters Engaging. And so how I started that was that I had noticed that there were other strong Anishinaabe Ikwe, other Native women, strong women who were standing up to our tribal business committees and talking with different government agencies, and how can we be a coalition to work to better our world for our future generations. And so one of the things that I've been a water walker since 2011, a water protector my whole life. It's as Anishinaabe, it's my responsibility to leave this world a better place than what I found it. And so I take those responsibilities very carefully. So one of the things that we Rise Coalition has done recently is that we were able to occupy the land where Enbridge is, the easement where Enbridge is trying to go under the Mississippi River, the first one, and then further down. But so we were able to occupy that land for 10 days and bring world awareness. The sheriff there in the county was amazing and understood Anishinaabe ceremonial rights. So that was amazing. But recently, what we plan on doing is taking a canoe trip down the Mississippi. Yay! So when I first joined the Rights of Mississippi, I had asked the ladies there, you know, has anybody paddled down the Mississippi? Nobody had, and that was my suggestion is, well, then if we are going to educate other people about the Mississippi, how can we do that if we've never paddled it? And so thank goodness everybody else will be doing that come Monday morning. So the best thing is that it be so taking some water samples. My thought was that if people, my husband and I had gone to New Orleans a couple years ago, and everybody there complained that everybody up north polluted their Mississippi. And so with that in mind, I was thinking, if we have this Canadian corporation, Enbridge, that wants to go through the headwaters of the Mississippi twice, then why are not all 10 states up in arms? Why is this only a Minnesota problem? Why is this only a Anishinaabe problem? Because there are millions of people that depend on the Mississippi watershed for their life, sustenance, recreation, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was the plan when we take this journey, is to be able to educate people and to continue it on every summer, you know. So this year we'll make it this far, next summer we'll make it a little bit further, and whatnot. So that's that. More than any questions. And hopefully you all heard me okay.
We heard you great, thank you. I know Michael is a confirmed river rat paddler and would love to be, you know, I'm offering his advice and assistance helpful in any way he could. He's made that trip, so he'd be all in, I'm sure. Let's move downstream before we take questions, if that's all right. Karisa Gilman-Hernandez is from Dutchtown South. Karisa, can you
Hi.
us up or keep us going?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, y'all. I'm Karisa Gilman-Hernandez. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, and I work for a nonprofit, Dutchtown South Community Corporation. We do neighborhood vitality. The demographics that we serve are predominantly, we are majority minority, with majority of folks in our neighborhood being Black, but we also have a large immigrant population from all across the world. And so we're really just like a patchwork series of neighborhoods. A little bit about Dutchtown South's work with environmental justice. First off, I know we're all on mute, we can stay on mute, but I think we should just take a moment to say, repeat after me. Environmental justice. Environmental justice is racial justice. Everybody say it.
Environmental
justice
is racial justice.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much for doing that for me. A lot of times I think before I was really doing this work, and I had it in my head that environmental work was about saving polar bears, and it was about picking up trash, and it was about all sorts of other things. And it is about that work, but it's also about keeping people healthy. We're located at Dutchtown South, and we try to do support healthy communities, and we try to do that holistically. So we got into environmental justice work around our alleyways. They are awful here in St. Louis, but if you we've been working with how to make them cleaner and healthier for everyone, with a solid waste report coming out shortly, with systemic changes that need to happen. Within that work, though, we started collaborating with other predominantly Black St. Louisans. So Action St. Louis, Arch City Defenders, and Sierra Club. With the help of the Washington University Interdisciplinary Environmental Law Clinic. I hope I got all those words in the right order. We put out a report at the end of 2019 entitled Environmental Racism in St. Louis. Essentially, if you look through that report, you can pick up any of the maps that are in there, and you will see of what neighborhoods and wards or city council districts, depending on what language you're familiar with, are predominantly Black. And then we put what sort of environmental issues they're facing. And if you put them like overlay, it is a match every time. St. Louis was purposely designed to ensure that those who are minorities, ethnic minorities, Black people, and people of color would be sequestered into arable land and thus easier to pollute. One of the things Dutchtown South is working on right now that is really closely related to the river is the Kinder Morgan facility when you all were talking about what you're facing in Minnesota with the pollutants, that really spoke to what we are seeing here in St. Louis. Because our area is predominantly Black, any kind of pollutant, in order to get a permit, needs to do some community outreach first. According to, I believe, in Protection Act of something or another. So what happened was the Kinder Morgan facility applied for their permit. They have been working without a permit forever because the Missouri Department of Natural Resources typically doesn't give permits out, but they just, but plants can just do what they're doing. They finally gave their permit to the Kinder Morgan facility, and we had some lawyers, the Great Rivers Environmental Law Center, or Law Clinic was watching. They saw the permit had been issued, let Dutchtown South know. And so we complained as well as with the NAACP that our Title VI civil rights were being abused. Missouri Department of Natural Resources said, thanks for complaining, but we don't agree with you. And we said, we didn't think you would, because they typically don't stand on our side. Shocking. So we went to the EPA. And in January, the EPA let us know that they agree we have a case here. And so it looks like they will be ruling in our favor. We are still, there's still a process to go through. But what will happen is the Kinder Morgan facility and facilities like that in Missouri who decided to put themselves in minority areas, or in the state said was fine to pollute these areas, will have to do specific community outreach efforts before they receive permits. And so we're talking about canvassing, we're talking about reaching out to neighborhood leaders, we're talking about reaching out to the schools and very clearly stating what are the chemicals they're releasing and what are the known health risks associated with those chemicals and those pollutants that are being put out. And so I'm excited that this has been moving forward. I'm excited that the EPA is taking it seriously. And the Kinder Morgan facility is specifically between, it is a very densely populated neighborhood, followed by a highway that is exhaust fumes and awfulness, and then the Kinder Morgan facility, and then our river. So that isn't just going into our air, it's not just going into our soil, it's going into our water. And we, being the good neighbors we are, just sending all those pollutants straight downstream to everybody else. And so, you know, we're all connected. Nothing happens in my neighborhood that doesn't affect the neighborhoods of all of St. Louis. Nothing happens in St. Louis that doesn't affect Missouri. And it just keeps going outwards. And so I'm excited to be here and talking with folks who are all along the Mississippi, because we are all flowing together through life. I am finished.
Thank you so much for that very, very informative and uplifting comment that people are able to, you know, get folks to pay attention and to make a change happen. That's wonderful story. Also from the St. Louis area, we have, is it Sunni Hutton? Okay, Sunni, take it away.
Hello, everyone. It's so good to see you. I enjoyed hearing everyone's story. I think it just kind of reaffirmed the connectedness that we all have. We all share the Mississippi. And I'm actually feeling a little lightheaded. I decided to go and work out in the garden at the height of the heat with no breakfast. So work with me here. I am originally from St. Louis, born and raised, went off to school at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, and was like, I gotta come back. Country music just ain't my thing, y'all. So I had to come back to my city. And this was also around the time of the day that I hadn't been home in a while, and the time that I decided to come back was that exact same day was when Mike Brown was murdered. And that just, again, just reaffirmed like, oh shit, I have to be here. St. Louis truly needs help. I am currently working with Blackrock Consulting. It's a local and majority women-owned business. We have expertise ranging from government relations, public policy, environmental sustainability, and community engagement. And I usually, when I do panel discussions, presentations, I always like to give my take on like the background of like how all of this came to be. So many of us have heard about the fires in the Amazon in California, oil spills in the Gulf, monsoons in Asia, air pollution from industry, flooding in Houston, high levels, like deadly high levels of lead in our water. And this has happened on a global scale to right in our very backyard. What these images that come up when you hear this, they fail to show the faces of the communities that are adversely affected by the environmental issues. These issues aren't just simply Earth's cyclical nature or just natural disasters. They try to just frame it that way, like this is common. These issues are set off by capitalism's consistent exploitation of nature. These conditions also demonstrate that Earth has this inability to endure capital's destructive process any longer. These very acts of violence are inherent in our socioeconomic system of capitalism. Capitalism's need for constant growth or profit enacts policies and practices that treat Earth like an inexhaustible supply of resources to produce commodities. Capitalism devalues and disenfranchises particular groups of people, especially poor, Black and brown folks, to further validate its quest for profit and path of destruction. And they make up excuses because of capitalism is, one of the things that fuel capitalism is racism. They say these things happen to you because of your own doing. Your neighborhood looks like that because of you, because you don't take care of it, or because you are intellectually inadequate, or you are inherently violent and criminal. The link between capitalism and racism, like the massive accumulation of wealth, was derived through centuries of forced slave labor of Africans and land theft of indigenous populations. These acts were validated and perpetuated through white supremacist narratives of the chosen race and inferior races. White capitalists increased and protected their concentrated wealth by shaping societal systems and policies based on race. Like, for example, when slavery ended, like slave owners actually got reparations for that shit. And let's not also forget, like in modern terms, there's the free labor of incarcerated Black men, right? When I think about some of the, like if I were to give you an example, like Sunni, how is racism, capitalism, and all of these things linked to environmental destruction and the destruction of communities? Flint, Michigan, nestled in Great Lake State, one of the largest freshwater sources, residents pay over $100 a month for water, while Nestle, one of the largest private water companies, pulls gallons of water out of the ground for virtually no money, right? To save the state, and this is, I'm going to talk about the people of Flint, to save the state about $200 million, unelected city manager Ed Kurtz switched the city's water to toxic Flint River, resulting in 9,000 children under the age of 6 to be exposed to health dangers from intellectual impairment and cancer. And here in St. Louis ourselves, we've also experienced that. In 2016, 88 water fountains and sinks in over 30 schools, our public schools, contain high levels of lead contamination. This is linked. Once that lead gets into the bloodstream, it is linked to intellectual and learning disabilities and behavioral disorders. And it is, for the person who just commented, it is upsetting because when we get, like, our children get tagged as like, they have behavioral issues or they're less intellectual, and it's just like, look what is happening to us. Look at the environment that we've been placed in and forced in. And additionally, Black children in the city of St. Louis are 10 times more likely than white children to visit the ER for asthma emergencies. And this is more likely because we're placed in neighborhoods where we're living in substandard housing. And there is a standard for housing here in St. Louis, but it's not being enforced. Substandard housing with mold that exacerbates those asthma symptoms. And we're in housing near industrial development, highways, and where demolitions, because of high levels of vacancy, are more likely to take place. And because students spend most of their waking hours in schools, the built environment and operative functioning of those schools contribute to developing behavior that can truly benefit or harm the health of our children. I actually live in Dutchtown, and I led the So Fresh, So Clean, So Creative Southside St. Louis project. And that was, we saw, I think everyone on this call could say that they've done it this way. But it was the first time that we had ever stepped into the environmental world as a community. So we created what we call community champions, and we canvassed the neighborhood. We developed our skill set around environmental sustainability. We developed our knowledge in all these areas so that we could better understand what was happening to our community, and so that we can actively make a change. So we collaborated with health departments and city officials and the Missouri Department of Natural Resources so that we could address the issues. We were cleaning up the neighborhood, and we were finding 1,000 pounds of waste in the alleys, in vacant lots, near our rivers. It was insane. We actually found 10,000 pounds of tires in one cleanup, right? So from that, we were able to make sense of the problem and request from our public officials the services that we need to better improve our neighborhoods. And it has to start from there. It can't start from the top. It has to start from the bottom up.
Thank you, Sunni. That was encouraging in the sense that how the connections between different community issues and different kinds of issues are getting made. It's a tough set of stories to hear, but it's necessary for us to hear them so that we can start to work on them. Our last speaker today is it Angelle? Angelle,
yeah.
Angelle.
Right. Yeah.
Angelle Bradford from the Louisiana Delta region. Take it away.
Yeah. Hi, y'all. So good to listen to everyone's stories. Yes, my name's Angelle, pronouns she, her, hers, and I am with the Sierra Club Delta chapter, which is the entire state of Louisiana. But I mostly run up and down I-10 in South Louisiana for a lot of the work. And of course, we hail from the land of Choctaw, Homa, Chitimacha. And while we have a lot of fights statewide here in Louisiana, what's so good about the river and the work around water is it constantly brings us back to the land and back to conservation and protection of our water sources. And so for the last couple of years, especially when I first joined the Delta chapter, a lot of the work I got grounded in was around protecting floodplains and special parts of our land that are near water that we continue to develop, which also exacerbates our flooding and puts our man-made materials in proximity with the river. But also we've been thinking a lot about how we live with water because we know we're going to be flooding more. And then for the first time, really with the work with Mississippi River Cities and Towns initiatives was the first time I started thinking about what the river should look like or should have looked like before it was destroyed or ruined. And a lot of that leads us into coalition work around Death Alley. So earlier it was mentioned, New Orleans has been mentioned, and Cancer Alley, which we've kind of shifted to calling Death Alley. And so a lot of our efforts are centered around preventing further destruction of the waterways, so the tributaries and distributaries that lead to and from the Mississippi River. That leads us to fight against a lot of petrochemical plants directly, but also push back on pipelines, both here in Louisiana and that will land in Louisiana, because obviously everything flows to everybody. And then, of course, quite a bit of the work originally was around recycling, maybe 5-10 years ago. But we now know that a lot of our energy, especially our student-led work, is around preventing the production of these things in the first place, which, of course, is really hard when we have everything from Exxon to Shell, BP, like all of the big names here in South Louisiana that are building out further along the petrochemical corridor between Louisiana, well, Texas, all the way to Alabama. And so we have a lot of fights, but listening to y'all has been very encouraging. And we're just gonna keep in coalition with others thinking through how can we protect and stop instead of just use these words of resiliency, which I get really sick of hearing because last year we had hurricanes threatening Louisiana almost every week for about 6 months. And so resiliency just seems not strong enough. We need to be preventing for not just ourselves, but for the world. And I'm so honored to be a part of the work with y'all.
Well, thank you so much. I think you mentioned a key word there, which is coalition, and a key idea, which is going beyond the words. Words matter, the right words matter, but then you have to go beyond those. And sometimes the supposedly right words aren't exactly the right words. I remember an article that got a lot of play recently, a couple of years ago, and it was about people in South Louisiana saying, stop calling me so resilient, because you're championing people for suffering and enduring when it'd be better for their conditions that cause the difficulty to be changed. So resilience is kind of a left-handed compliment, you know. I apologize to left-handers. We have a few minutes to have a more open discussion. I don't know if we want to, well, I mean, we can open this up, but like I said before, please use the raise hand function so that we can keep order here. I think there's a lot of people that probably want to have something to say. We've heard a lot of great ideas and really important, powerful stories and so forth here. So the floor is open with the raise hand function. That even includes you, Michael.
All right. I am not doing a good example at modeling the raise hand. There we go. All right, hand is raised.
There we go.
You know,
Thank you.
Yeah, Pat is a professor, so you know. You know, I'm just curious to hear from our panelists, right? Where everyone's from different parts of this interconnected system that is, you know, the river. And so I'm just curious if anyone would like to reply to any ideas or threads that other panelists brought up, and maybe things that are like, oh, that's kind of similar, you know, to what we're seeing here locally. Or like, wow, I never even thought of that. That must be a very place-based thing that doesn't exist here. So feel free to run with that however you would like.
Nookomis, Debra, yes. Go ahead.
Bonjour.
You're breaking up pretty badly there.
Okay, so I will continue this conversation with all of you we could now. Blink twice if you can hear me. Okay, good. So I was saying I would really love to be able to continue this conversation with all of the other panelists, being that we only have an hour, and to just pick some brains and see what else we can do. So I appreciate this opportunity to meet you all. Miigwech, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today and taking time. I know it's very busy up in the North Woods right now. Jenny.
Hello, everybody. I just have, I don't know if I know some of you, not everybody, but I work with MRCTI and reducing plastic waste in the Mississippi River. And what I'd like to know is how do we get, engagement, and we know that plastic waste is definitely part of environmental justice based on food access and a lot of other services and things like that. So how do we get more folks involved? Because I don't want to just sit and make decisions here in St. Louis for people. I just am not sure how to even get that ball rolling. So I'd like, I don't know, Karisa, Sunni, and Angelle, if you have any input on that, that would be fantastic.
In regards to plastic, I have a community member who is very doesn't use plastic. She is very conscientious about all plastic that she uses. And so it has challenged me to ensure that when I host events that I know she'll be at, and she's at a lot of them, to ensure that there is no as little plastic as I can. I've switched from individual drinks to hand out to a container of lemonade, and things like that. And so I think, encouraging as we are re-emerging from quarantine and doing events in person again and engaging with each other again, encouraging each other and the organizations we work with to get creative on how we do food distribution at our events. I'm trying to switch from bags of chips, which are really easy for me to do, to cuties, those little oranges and things like that, where it doesn't necessarily come with as much plastic and permanent waste. But I'm very curious what others have to say as well.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to, because I think the question was, Jenny, was around community engagement, correct? I don't want to.
Yeah.
Okay, I was I don't want to say get it all confused. But one thing that I've learned from community engagement is showing up and being your authentic self is huge. People could see that. Having a concern for what people what they need themselves and listening to their stories. And then you're able to, when you hear what they have to say, then you're able to connect it back to what to what you're doing. When we do canvassing, we do maybe 30% of the talking, and the folks that we are engaging are doing the majority of the talking, and we ask questions to have them think more about it. So we just don't knock on their door and tell them, here's what we're doing, get involved. It's more along the lines of having them make the connections between what they're experiencing and what the problem is. They end up identifying the problem. They even end up identifying the target right there in a 10-minute conversation. Because I do community engagement through Blackrock Consulting, and another way that we've been able to engage folks is going to those community leaders, and not the ones you just assume are community leaders. It's not the president of the neighborhood association. It's not the loudest person at the ward meeting. You really have to be keen on identifying who those leaders are. The leader might be Miss Francine that lives on the 3400 block of Iowa, who sits on her porch daily and knows everything that's happening up and down the street and knows every kid by name. So it's being really creative and identifying who those leaders are, because those leaders are going to be the ones that give you like credibility, and like the trust will be just like transferred to you because of the leadership of that one community leader. That's what I have for now, at least. But you know, if you want, I can definitely. I know you're probably Jenny. You know my colleague Jen DeRose. Okay, we'll connect.
Okay, that would be great, because I really want to work on that within St. Louis. And I know I've been working with Angelle in Baton Rouge, but haven't really dug into my own community. So that's one of our next steps with this Mississippi River Plastic Pollution Initiative. It's really getting into the communities that we need to hear from.
That was a fabulous insight. I think all of us know that Miss Francine in our neighborhood, and the knowledge that the reminder that that's where the power is, that's where the levers are to talk to, is a great insight for us. Some of those Miss Francines might be on our call. So we know some, we need to know more. Meanwhile, we are about out of time, and I promised Michael that he would have a last few minutes to close us up. Michael?
Yeah, wonderful. I appreciate that, Pat. Hey, Roy, I just saw you kind of motion like you were going to raise your hand.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, you know, we've talked a lot about plastics. I might suggest that what we do is to take our own grocery bags to the store and talk to the managers and ask them to try to stop supplying these plastic bags. Millions of them a day go out in the United States. And of course, we have to have industry to produce all of those. So this might be just a small way of us to get to say something about the plastics industry. And like I want to emphasize, it's important to talk to the owners of these, and maybe they can supply bags which are not made of plastic.
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Roy. Well, great. That'll wrap up this really fast hour. I would imagine many are feeling similar to me, where it'd be nice to just keep this going for another half hour, another hour. And I sent an email, just full transparency, sent an email out to the panelists right before this call, just that, you know, especially through the network, like we really just try to see ourselves as an umbrella, like a convener. As we mentioned earlier with the One Mississippi program, we are working from the headwaters to Gulf. And so what I shared with the panelists earlier, and I believe it deeply in my heart, is that, you know, this event right here was one step. It was another step of coming together as a united river to tackle the various issues we are experiencing, especially centering those that are most affected by environmental hazards that all of our presenters shared so much about. And, you know, I will draw our attention again to this public petition. Misa Khan is the policy director of the Mississippi River Network, and, you know, behind the scenes driving our slideshow today. And she has worked with many folks up and down the river on this Mississippi River Restoration Resiliency Initiative. And I even saw her drop in one of our internal communications, Angelle, after you shared about the word resiliency, of just, you know, thinking more critically about how we talk about this type of initiative, and as it moves to become bill, what that means. And I think it's just a great real-time example of we have to do this work all together. And so thank you for that. I, you know, just will make another encouragement right now. If you haven't yet, to sign this petition, we're definitely in the building public will phase, which is going to have a quick turnaround to more direct action with this. And so, Misa, did you have a total count of signatures? Where are we at?
think we're above 500, but I've been conserving my internet as the screen sharer.
Awesome. We appreciate that. No doubt we've been checking this, the petition form about every hour, and it's just awesome to see the numbers keep increasing. So if you have your phone, if you haven't yet, you can scan the QR code. Otherwise, the link is in the chat, and I'll follow up with that via email for another opportunity to sign it. And so on our last slide here, on behalf of the Mississippi River Network, we thank all of our panelists for joining today. Pat, we thank you for moderating today. We thank all of our attendees for joining on and listening in. No doubt there is a lot of work ahead. And so I hope everyone is feeling a little more informed after our hour together, and maybe a little more motivated to engage with your local community and in connection with our whole United Riverfront. So with that, thank you all. I wish you a safe, cool, and maybe even a little bit joyous rest of your day. Thank you.
Petition's over 500, by the way.
Love it. All right, everyone, take care.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.